correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm Steve, and other Steve is otherwise occupied this evening, but I've got a guest tonight. We're going to talk about something really cool. But before I get into that, I want to take a minute to tell you about another podcast here on the D20 Radio Network. And this week, that's going to be The Story Told. Now, if you go look up The Story Told and listen to them, you're going to hear a voice that you've heard on our Exalted AP in the character of Pale Nimbus. Nim is played by Logan, who is one of the two hosts of The Story Told podcast, along with their co-host Lex. They do a podcast that's kind of similar to this, but maybe more structured and maybe a little more tending toward narratively focused games where we kind of run the gamut a bit more. But yeah, Logan is very, very cool. It's a very, very good show. Their most recent episode at the time of recording, they are discussing Fragged Empire 2, which I backed and have the very, very pretty book sitting over here in a stack next to me. And we actually interviewed the designer Wade back when it was on Kickstarter. So if you're looking for more fun RPG talk podcasts, check out The Story Told. And anyway, from there, we're going to talk to a game designer tonight. And, well, look, Peter, correct? I actually forgot to ask you that ahead of time.
That's me.
So Peter is a game designer, and he has a game that's, what, you're heading to crowdfunding here in the near future, or is it already up?
Yeah, so the game is already up, Beefy Shotgun Wizards. It's pre-launch right now, so you can go follow the campaign. We will be formally launching in the next few months here.
Okay. So Kickstarter, backer kit, game found?
Kickstarter.
Okay. So, I look, I got a message from someone who is at least somewhat involved in the project, and I own a number of other products with that person's name in them, and I've been very happy with them. But when we start talking about RPGs and someone goes, Beefy Shotgun Wizards, my ears perk up, because there's something to be said for, look, I love a good, gritty, serious game of like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu or whatever, right? But sometimes it's fun to just do the weird thing. And it sounds like, just based on the title, that's a lot of your inspiration. But I'll let you tell us more about it from there.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. You really hit the nail on the head. And I will say I try and get somewhere between 8 and 10 sessions in when I go to a con. Like I really love, just getting my schedule full up. And the number one piece of feedback I get is this delivered exactly what I was hoping it would. So really, it does what it says on the tin, as they say. But yeah, Beefy Shotgun Wizards is very in your face. It's designed to be fun, quick, lots of action, lots of silliness, a little bit of hyper violence, but all in good fun.
It seems to look, and I can't speak for everyone else's gaming experience, but early in your gaming career, for a lot of us, there were those things that you did that live on in your memory forever because they weren't the way you were supposed to resolve the situation. Like the time a friend and I, and if you knew the two of us, especially at the time in real life, you would see the folly of this immediately. But a friend was running a Dragonlance campaign. He said we could both play Kender. So because he was trying to mess with us, we ended up with a bag of Devouring, which the other Kender almost jumped into. But we realized what it was, and like, okay. So then we proceeded to stick it over the head of a Draconian.
It's all the war crimes, all the war crimes.
Or the time that I made my Dark Sun DM figure out the damage for a drunken sailor.
Yeah. Love it.
So there's that element that all of us, or many of us, I'm sure, have, of that, the zany things that you did, and it's fun, and maybe you don't want to do it all the time, but gosh, it sure is fun to do sometimes.
100%. And I mean, that's really what the game is going for. And I'm glad uh, it communicates what I meant it to. A lot of one of the pieces of feedback I get a lot from folks is this is a great con game. This is a game I'd want to play, between campaigns. You could theoretically play this as an extended campaign. And I actually have a good friend of mine who does the Worlds Away actual play. They usually do a pretty serious sort of like space opera
Hmm.
game, sort of like The Expanse ish. But he ran, it was his first time DMing. He ran like a 5 or 6 episode arc of Beefy Shotgun Wizards, which shocked me because it's like, oh, you're trying to sustain this over like, 12 to 15 hours, which they do a great job of. They tweak some mechanics. But really, the heart of the game is you get the full experience of a dungeon crawl from entering to killing the big bad over the course of 3 hours. I should say the elevator pitch for the game is you pick up the action mid dungeon. You're all wizards. You've run out of spell slots, and you take your shotguns off your back and have at it. So sort of turning the idea of the D4 hit point wizard on its head.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. I saw when Walton Wood sent me the blurb about this, he sent me a link to somebody's actual play of it. I don't remember whose it was, and it felt very much like what would if you let Vince McMahon cast a a, a Wizards Out of the Spells story.
Yeah, that was it. The Wandering Monster one. I love
That might
that.
be it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they start off with they were at a bachelor party and their limo dropped
Yes.
them off at the dungeon instead of the club. I loved that opening. Yeah, it was great.
So now, again, I watched most of that, but I'm guessing you have these are pretty simple OSRE mechanics. I'm guessing.
Yeah, so it's D6 dice pool.
Okay.
The so the core of it is actually I was trying to recapture the fun of playing like third and fourth edition 40K where you grab a fistful of dice, you throw them down, and a lot of stuff happens. So it is a different. It's not a D20 system
Okay.
in that
Okay.
sense, but you've got 4 core stats: fight, shoot. Those are obvious. Then you have think and save. Think is what you use to loot. So it is important. It's usually like how much treasure you find, but you can also use it for like sort of Rube Goldberg antics. Or I had someone who only had a good think stat, and they found some fancy stationery and like made ninja stars. I let them use think for that. And then save, which is avoiding damage or like gritting your teeth and bearing through it. So those are the 4 core stats. It's pretty simple. You start with a number between 1 and 4. That's how many dice you roll. Usually a 4+ is a success. So it lets you check a lot of dice, get a lot of stuff done. The other really hallmark mechanic is the Jenga tower. So your item slots are basically for like important loot that you find, weapons, important utility things of that nature. The Jenga tower symbolizes how dangerous the dungeon is getting, how much time you've spent down there, how much time you take to loot, how much time you take to rest, all that good stuff. And it's really worked out fantastically. You get typically between 25 and 30 pulls on a Jenga tower before it falls over. And everyone's joking around at the beginning, but by the time I get to the 3 hour, close to the end of the 3 hour mark at a con game, usually everyone's like screaming at each other not to erase on the table because the tower's wobbling. So that it adds a good layer of time pressure. There's a tactile element a lot of folks like, and it really not knocking how any other systems do it, but I've always felt the bookkeeping angle to be unsatisfying when you're in a dungeon. I really wanted to give a sense of urgency to just how dangerous it gets, and the Jenga tower really delivers.
Hmm. No, it sounds neat. I didn't notice the Jenga tower thing in the playthrough thing I watched. I may have just missed it because I may have been like more listening to it while I was working or something because I have a propensity to do that. Um, but no, that's and look, the dice pool stuff is always fun. Now, can you add dice to the pool by justify like? Have you ever read or played Grant Howitt's Havoc Brigade?
I've heard of it, but I've not played it.
Okay, he uses D6s, but basically Like you automatically get like 2d6s, and then you basically the idea is that you have to narratively justify how you're using a skill, a drive, an item, and then but if you can do so, then you get to add the dice. So it becomes this bonkers game of, how can I make up a story or justify this? I ran it at a convention once and I hacked it a little bit because it was a Tolkien themed convention. So I made new characters that were definitely not the Lord of the Rings characters. Of course not, like instead of the 6 goblins, the one character was 3 hobbits, stuff like that. But the one session I ran, the characters at players decided to have an in character drinking game.
I love it.
And at one point, and I'm sitting here going, this game barely has any rules. How I'm like, here, okay, here's how this is going to work. You have to justify to each other how you're adding the dice from whatever it is you're doing to your roll. We'll do it like kind of like a elimination tournament. And somehow the character playing the definitely not Aragorn character
Yeah,
used his fancy broken sword in the drinking contest.
that's awesome.
You know, so like as the game progresses, it becomes this chaotic thing of how many dice can I roll? And so I'm curious, does this have a mechanic where you can, so to speak, stack on dice by doing things?
Yes, so there is a meta currency iron, which I actually, when playing in person, you can get iron zinc ingots cheap as dirt. They sell them by the pound, and they're very satisfying to toss. I tell everyone, keep your head on a swivel because I will throw these things harder than I mean to. But it's a nice chunky piece of metal, and you earn iron for feats of badassery. I highly encourage players to nominate each other. I usually get in the zone and honestly forget. Every now and again, I will like assign an immediate use iron just for good narrative. So basically saying add a dice there. But the iron can also be used. There are a few items that let you spend iron for additional effects. You can also use iron to introduce a random plot element. It's pretty free form, so I like to encourage folks to use it as a more free form meta currency. But there's no upper limit. It's not like inspiration in D&D. You can hoard as much iron as you want. There's a few, actually, the Broken Sword of Kings, wink wink, nod nod, a Lord of the Rings reference. You get an iron every time violence starts. So anytime a combat encounter starts, you get an iron. And there's several items like that. So by the time you get to the end of a game, oftentimes folks are sitting on a lot of iron, and just as you reference, you'll get some craziness. You'll get some pretty hefty rolls.
Mm. But again, to me, just with the title and whatnot, it feels like, in a sense, that's what you want to build toward at the end of the session.
Exactly. And a couple other things that really I try to make stand out in the game. I have a big D666 table of loot, and I've been adding to that. The final rule book, I probably will have more. My original goal was to have enough so there's D6666. You can roll 46s. So I should know this. I think like 1,200 some odd items. There's going to be more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And with the themed tables, it's gotten a little bit easier to add things. But there's a lot of zany items, and it goes from the more mechanical weapons to just off the wall stuff. I tell everyone an item may have mechanical effects. It also is what it says it is. So there's like a carton of small engine oil. There is vintage orc pornography, which one of the first sessions I ever ran, someone asked, "Is it sticky?" And I was like, I don't really like that question, but sure, it's sticky. And they used it against the Fey Nats, which are these creatures you can't really kill in a typical fashion. They just bug you and force you to re-roll successes until you find a way to get rid of them. And they essentially used the vintage orc pornography as flypaper, and so it ended up working. But there's just a lot of weird stuff, and it's a relatively free form system, which really encourages randomness. And as long as you, or creative play, as long as you have one or two folks at the table that are really down, that spirit can really spread in fun ways. And I don't know that I've ever played at a table where at least, once one person takes the hook and starts pitching wild ideas, everyone jumps in.
Yeah, that's been my experience in many games is, you got to get that one person to kind of kickstart, but once you say yes and then everyone else's eyes light up and they start joining in.
Exactly. And because it is a game that's designed, as I mentioned, you're supposed to be able to get a full 3-hour dungeon in. You're going between somewhere between like 7 and 12 rooms depending on the dungeon. Some of the rooms go a little bit quicker than others. And some of the dungeons are more geared towards larger like epic battles where there might be multi-stage rooms, but you're going at a pretty brisk pace. So I've oftentimes you can find, while you have no spells, you can find spell scrolls. I had a pretty tough vampiric boss in one scenario where they're fighting him in like a munitions factory, and he disperses into bats as a way to like mitigate damage and fly around. And someone had the gravity funnel, which is like a 60-foot long funnel, and they're like, "Is there a furnace in here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, there's a furnace in here." Like, how strong is the gravity? And I'm like, where are you going with this? He's like, can I suck the bats into the furnace? It's like, yeah, that's great. And it was supposed to be a more mechanically like tough fight, but he's sacrificing a single use item. So I don't feel like you're taking it easy on the players, giving them like they have a great idea, they're burning a cool item, they beat the boss, because that's badass, right? Like sucking vampire bats into a furnace. It's awesome.
Well,
So like that kind of play is really encouraged.
well, it sounds like in a lot of ways this is like I've had a lot of fun playing very, very simple games. Stuff like my co-host was very fond of like the 200-word RPG challenge and a lot of those little one-page games. And the thing to me about those is that it's very much about just lean into whatever the thing is. And that sounds like kind of where you maybe stacked a little more structure on top of it. But this is very much a spirit of the game, and we'll worry about the details if we have to.
100%, 100%. And it's fun because the character sheet itself is very simple and straightforward, but you can pack a lot on there. Damage is something that I tweaked a little bit over time, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So essentially, when you're taking damage, there's hits do damage, and sometimes damage will give you an injury. Now, how does this all work? You have dungeon wretches, which are essentially hirelings. They can help carry your gear. You can also use them as a human shield. They absorb a full hit. So if you take a hit that does a lot of damage, that's when you might want to throw a wretch in front of it. You also have save slots, which are essentially your hit points. You start out with 6 of those, but your inventory items also absorb damage. So you have that decision point, right? Once you start taking hits and taking damage, am I blocking it with a wretch? Am I taking damage to my actual wizard, or am I starting to sacrifice items? And then the final piece is the injuries. Usually, some more formidable creatures will do an injury. You just write that down in an inventory spot, so you can't use that slot. And some injuries may have a specific effect. Like if you're paralyzed, you're like -1 for all dice rolls. Or it may be something like your arm has been chopped off, and that's just, there's not a mechanical effect, but now you're down an arm. So it's all pretty simple, straightforward, easy to understand, but there's a lot of simple decisions that can be made, and also a lot of narrative you can get out of it with those. And it's not a pain to track because it's that nice, simple sheet. Everything's written. So I'm really proud of that aspect of the game.
Look, I love what I'm hearing because it sounds like you said, it's a lot of fun to just throw down, play. Look, here's the thing: you roll the dice that makes sense. Let's go do stuff. But yeah, like, so how did this concept come to you? I'm just curious.
I think, as dumb as it sounds, it was just that stupid joke or you've seen the memes like out of spells but not out of shells, where it's the wizard with the shotgun. And I don't. I wanted something. I've been playing a lot of 5e just because that's what the folks in my home group like to play. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of fun. I also yearn for the days. I've only played second edition D&D and fifth edition, right? I was playing second edition up until like 2019. As fun as higher level D&D can be, it just drags so much. And I've had a single long like epic combat drag out over 2 sessions. It was like, damn it, I want to play a lot of encounters into a tight space, and have something that's fun and thematic. And I couldn't tell you when the title hit me, but when it did, it was like, okay, that was the moment. Like Beefy Shotgun Wizards, it's like this captures what I'm trying to convey. And then, yeah, I was kind of shocked with how well the first game went that I ran. And I'm talking like a page and a half of handwritten notes and some random tables was pretty much all I had, and some friends with a bunch of D6s. And it was very much a beer and pretzels game, but it turned out well.
I like it, and it's I mentioned before we started recording. One of the things I love about a lot of the people that are in this, and it seems to be especially small designers. It's very much a come share my fun mentality. It's not like, look, I've made the greatest game that ever happened. It's, look, I've made something that's really fun and it's got cool themes, and won't you come share in my fun? And I get that vibe from you, and I know, Walton Wood. I believe he's affiliated with this somehow. At least that's the impression I got.
Yep.
A lot of the people that he's worked with, they very much have this kind of themes, and be it Brian Colin, Gav Quiroga, stuff like that. It's very themed, and it like Brian stuff. Brian Colin is all Morkborg based, Vastgrim, and Gav Quiroga's stuff is, look. Gav Quiroga doesn't put much as far as system in his games, but oh my god, are they great concepts?
I've got to check. So I got to check him out. So what does Brian do?
Brian
Or, I'm sorry, I'm like,
Gabriel
I know
Quiroga.
Brian. Yeah.
He did. I want to call it Demon Knight, but that's not the name of it. Oh my gosh, he did Neurosity. He did Warpland. I'm completely blanking on the name of the one, and hang on a second. Let me look through my stack of books here. I see it. Hell Knight.
Oh, that looks awesome. I feel like I've seen that somewhere.
And Walton was the editor for this.
Okay, that could be, yeah. Walt is the editor for Beefy Shotgun Wizards, and he actually I was introduced to Walt through Daniel Harilla Carlson, who does the art. Daniel and I connected doing a game jam a few years back, and it's so funny because we were just both on the Discord sharing art, and I really liked his art, and I sort of pitched him the idea, and he really loved it. He just started like doodling almost immediately, and connected me with Walt. Walt's Ninja Board project, and similar sense of humor. Which they're actually up on Kickstarter, I believe, still with their first expansion. So folks should check that out.
Yeah, I know we had
Walt
Daniel
and Lucas are now the publishers for this, and Walt is still the editor.
So now is Daniel doing your art for this?
Yes.
Oh, cool. His stuff, because actually he and Walt on to talk about what was the dungeon thing he just did.
Oh yeah.
My brain is slipping because it's.
I was the second backer for that. I was pissed I wasn't number one.
Dug and Throat Dungeon.
Yes, Dug and Throat. Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel's artwork has this kind of aggro whimsy. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a fantastic description of the art.
Like aggro in like the 80s, early 90s skater aggro, but kind of whimsical at the same time. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, it works great. It feels very old school and analog. I mean, it is analog and gritty. It really captures what I wanted to capture was the spirit of old school D&D, where they were just hiring a bunch of like high school kids to draw monsters because they lived near Gary Gygax. And that I mean, Daniel's art is fantastic. Certainly much better than that. But there's like I said, that because he works analog, and he cleans things up digitally, but there's so much personality and flair, and it's not. I'm not gonna trash talk any specific games, but there's some of the bigger ticket games. I just I don't know. I feel like there's something lost. Like it's lost some of that charm. Even though the
Mhm.
art may be beautiful, it's just not as it's missing something. And Daniel just I don't. It has that charm,
No,
and it
I
really yeah. It captures exactly what I wanted for the game.
well, that's like, and I think, obviously I haven't really looked over. I know you have a quick play or something out, don't you currently?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The quick shot, which folks can download on itch, and I usually have a few copies with me. If anyone ever sees me at a con, I usually have some copies.
Um, but like sometimes, like look, artwork is cool and it can sell books but there are those games that just it somehow it adds more than just being pretty pictures. And like one of the books, like to me, it's kind of like one of those grail books, if you will, of like the standard of how you could Cyberpunk 2020, man. That book, the art, the layout, the text, it all just oozes this attitude. And it sounds like you're getting a lot of that, collaborating with Daniel for the artwork, because this just feels very right.
I'm trying. I'm not revolutionizing layout, I will say. It's still bizarre to me that, you refer, oh, we have a game designer on. It's like, well, yeah, I suppose technically, but this is a passion project. I don't do this stuff professionally. I'm just having fun. And honestly, like Daniel's a great influence. This I know people can't see, but like the background, if you can see here,
Hmm.
I just messed around with inks and took photos, edited them on my phone, and figured out how it's like, oh, if I slap this over white text, and it's silly, like it's a little detail. I don't know how many people will notice, but it feel like it's mine. And I was also very happy with how I was psyched. And Daniel's great because I show him these ink splotches. I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? He's like, that's a really cool asset. It's like, thank you for encouraging. I feel like a lot of people would have looked at these ink splotches and been like, "What the hell are you sending me?" He sees possibility. So that's yeah. I love collaborating with Daniel.
Well, so I guess I don't know. How did you get into gaming, and how long have you been gaming? Because you said you played second edition and fifth as far as D&D, and I got into gaming in the mid '90s, so I came in kind of at the tail end of second edition. Like Dark Sun was actually my first experience with D&D, but WEG Star Wars and Call of Cthulhu and
Yeah. So it would have been similar. My brain gets fuzzy. Sometime mid '90s, likely maybe early '90s. I would have been in either fifth grade or middle school when I had a friend who was got me into D&D. And as I've been doing some of these interviews, it's really I feel like I've unlocked core memories. Like I don't know which came first, but when you're a little kid and you just draw pictures and like make video game levels, quote unquote, which
Mhm.
I didn't think was such a common thing, but now I have kids and I'm always surprised they do the same weird things that I thought only we did as kids.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I played second edition. I have distinct memories of creating our own little like hacks to do a Dragon Ball Z type thing. There was one sleepover where we invented our own. I don't know. It felt like we were criminals in RoboCop era Detroit. It wasn't. I don't even know why we were doing this. We are like in middle school. There was no sci-fi. There was no magical nothing. It was just we were just figuring out how to scrape by. And I can't remember much about the session other than we like kicked in the doors of a safe house at the end and found a shotgun, and that was the coolest thing. So I did RPGs as a younger kid. Into high school, I got more into 40K. That was just what the friend group I was with at the time was really into. I still love doing models. I think you can see
I
a
can
lot of
see
my
you've got some.
unpainted junk behind me. Um, but yeah, I painted a lot. I never stopped painting and building minis, but it was only I guess about 10 years ago at this point, I got back into RPGs when I was playing board game with a friend who said something like, if we had a DM, I'd love to start playing D&D again. And that got me back into second edition,
Mhm.
which had been what he was really into. I will say I was listening to one of your recent shows. I do miss the experience of going to half price books to, comb through the stacks. And I know you can order everything online. And actually Noble Knight is my friendly looking local game store. I
Uh,
was there physically earlier
okay.
today. Um, but there's something about going to a half price book in a new city. I used to travel a lot for work, not anymore. But like combing through and figuring out what weirdness is in there, that's just awesome. I've played a handful of different RPGs over the years. Shadowrun, I forget which edition. I was in a Shadowrun game for a while. I played Morkborg. I'm currently running a Shadow Dark game, and I play in a 5e game. I enjoyed signing up for random stuff when I go to cons. Cairn, I had a blast playing Cairn. My character died. My first character died, and my second character got to defeat the ghouls who killed my first while they were feasting on the corpse of my first character. Uh, I'm going off on a tangent. That's my broad RPG experience.
Tangents are our stock and trade here, so that's
There you
perfectly
go.
all right. No, I was just curious because like everybody kind of, a lot of us are in some ways similar, but there's just the different, like. So I grew up with very conservative parents who still kind of had the satanic panic thing going, and well, D&D was evil, but my friend had, well, they're playing this Call of Cthulhu game. Well, that's not D&D. Must be okay.
That's funny. That's funny.
And
Oh
this
man.
actually was the OG Delta Green as the third party supplement for Call of Cthulhu.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so that the humor in that concept has increased considerably to me over the years.
That is wild. It's such a niche joke, but for those who get the niche, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. Oh my god.
Um,
Oh,
but like I don't know, it just like it's so neat for me now to see so many people just making games that like, you know what, this isn't big and expansive, and it isn't trying to do everything because that's the other thing, man. Is like there were those games, and you still have them, not as much, but like the Palladium engine, the GURPS engine, that just want to do everything. Which, look, fine, great, but sometimes I just want to sit down and have fun.
there was an interesting video. I'm sure I couldn't find it, but Dale Kingsmill, if you've heard of her, she's Monarch's Factory, I think is her channel.
Doesn't ring a bell, but
Well, she talked about how the more mechanics you put, like you think it's freedom, but it's actually a cage. What like the more there's a tipping point essentially where the more mechanics you add to a thing, the less choice it actually gives you because when there's never going to be an answer for everything, but the harder you work to make an answer for everything, the more you're actually limiting the tactical infinity, quote unquote, as it were, which
mhm.
is really yeah, I that's why I like the simple systems. It just makes it so much easier to the quicker someone can grasp a system, the quicker they can start breaking it in fun ways.
Yeah, yeah. No, I see. I have this thing where I kind of like crunchy systems, but I kind of don't for exactly what you're saying, and kind of what you were saying there about how the rules become a cage. It's I think of it, and maybe this is just because of how my brain works, but it's like tuning an engine, right? The engine in a top fuel dragster is tuned to an incredible level. It makes thousands of horsepower and what, but it one is tuned to the edge of its life, and if it's not set up right, it either goes boom or it doesn't go. Whereas the engine in my little 20-year-old Honda Civic just keeps putt-putting along.
That's right. And I should say that what I just said may have sounded like an out and out criticism of crunchy systems. I love me a crunchy system too. They do different things well at different times, and I
Hmm.
get a ton of satisfaction from crunchy systems too. So not saying anyone's doing it wrong.
Oh,
Don't come for me, internet. But yeah, yeah,
trust me, I've said more or less the same thing many times. Like I've been playing, and unfortunately, due to work schedule changes, I have to step away from it. I'm playing in an Earthdawn game, and it's a very crunchy system, but the world is fascinating,
mm,
and the system and the world are just so intertwined. Like the system is crunchy and odd and detailed, but it makes sense in the context of the setting.
that's really cool. I have to check that out. I know you were talking recently about how Eberron and the 3 or 3.5 really were like meshed
Well,
together. And there is something beautiful about that when you can really thematically tie a setting with the mechanics in a really satisfying way.
Well, I think like in the context of Eberron, right? Keith designed it. I mean, it was literally a I'll call it a contest or a casting call, basically, where Wizards went, "Hey, we want to do a new setting. Let's put these out there." And his was one of the finalists, and but so much of that, to hear him talk about his ethos behind it was, okay, so if this is how things work, what is the logical extension of that? And to me, part of if you take that system away, now the logic of the world isn't founded.
Yeah. And what's so cool about that is I think we've all had the experience sitting around an RPG table where we've realized there's something broken like in the world in how a mechanic works, where we've all just got to kind of pretend that no one would use like shape earth this way, like, or some free cantrip that lets you essentially, you know, be a worm.
Yeah,
And the idea that someone takes that and says, "No, no, no, we're taking, as you said, everything to sort of its logical conclusion and thinking it through." Like that is so cool and so satisfying when it's like we don't have to, like, we get to lean into reading into the rules in that. Like that's really cool.
yeah. But like rules just for the sake of rules are kind of like okay, like Palladium was one of the first systems I delved into. It was the first engine I ever GM'd, specifically riffs. And there are so many weird this that. Technically, according to the rule book, if you don't have the skill, you can't even roll for it. Well, yes, but how many times as a GM, do you put your player in a situation where, like, who would have ever thought I'd end up in this situation?
Yep, yeah. I I really wanted to play Rifts or experience Rifts. I've heard so much about it, and the world sounds bonkers.
It is.
Um, it also sounds like it's just a heavy lift to get into and then to get others into.
It it was it's a lot of things, and it's amazing and frustrating, and I need to really dive into the Savage Worlds adaptation because that strips away a lot of the less fun elements to it. It's just been one of those where I have this strange thing of, despite the fact that I am a digital content creator and I put out a podcast and I do it on a computer, I am much more of a tactile analog person. And so, like, trying to use digital tabletops, be it Roll20 or whatever else, confounds the crap out of me. Add to that, Savage Worlds is a very tactile system. You use the playing cards and the this and the that. There's a lot of kind of physical trinkets to it. And now, also because of the way they had to adapt things, it's generally considered as a statement of fact that Savage Rifts is the crunchiest version of Savage Worlds.
Hmm.
Well, I don't want to try and learn to GM a new to me system while trying to figure out Roll20 or whatever other digital thing I have. And I've not had a chance to get it on a physical table where I can manipulate and see things and then go to the digital tabletop and go, okay, I need it to do the thing I did this way.
Yeah, I play a game that the 5e game we run, and it is cool. Like some of the plugins and systems that exist are cool. I don't want to knock them. There are also moments where it's like, okay, roll for a check. It's like, all right, I got to navigate back to that page, and it's like I got a d20 sitting in front of me. I can just chuck it 10% of the time. It's either a success or a failure, right? With the 1 and the 20. And let's be honest, like you usually know, and we can put all these barriers. I'm a big proponent at the physical table of saying, like, just roll the dice. Just roll the dice. We can figure out the number you need to hit later, because the odds are you're gonna know. If it's on the edge, we can do the calculations. But when you're doing it virtually, there's that interface there. It can slow things down. I don't know. It's tough. I also played a lot more RPGs during the pandemic, and actually, that's probably the only reason we have weekly games with my friend group, is because we can play online. But
Oh, yeah.
there's definitely something lost there too.
It's different, and there's just that different dynamic because it's just different. I mean, it's still fundamentally. I honestly, a lot of our Exalted game that that we're playing the recordings of. We're playing that via Roll20 because we have what, two people in the southern U.S., two of us here in Pennsylvania, one in New York, one in New Jersey, I think, and hopefully that's everybody. um, but we're spread across the country. The crew that we recorded a lot of stuff with was from Maine to Texas, I think. You know, uh, so I mean, it enables you to get together. It creates a lot more opportunity to play. But I think, and now the Jenga tower for Beefy Shotgun Wizards obviously is a little bit of a hiccup there.
So we do. I have a dice pool system for online play,
Okay.
which works, but is not nearly as satisfying.
Mhm.
But to your point, it just, in the Wandering Monster game, you didn't miss it. They just didn't do it,
Mm.
because also they were. Those guys are fantastic, and Kevin, the DM, has turned into a good friend of mine since the time when he recorded that. But it's yeah, I mean, it is something you're really losing something if you're not using the Jenga tower in person, but also it can it can feel like more of a chore. Like every time we go from room to room, rather than, okay, who's going to pull the block? It's, grab your fistful of dice and you remove the ones. Basically, people start with between 10 and 15 dice, depending on the size of the dungeon. You roll them every time that you'd make a pull, and you remove the one, which it can get tense, but just not in the same way as the tower does.
Yeah, well, see, now I've used, and I actually stole it from Russ Morrissey. I will use that as a DM tool sometimes as a undefined countdown.
Ooh,
Where and like the way he described it, with being the guy behind EN World, if anyone's not familiar with who he is, he will literally grab, say, 66s and pick a number, and something's as a countdown timer, and just every so many minutes, checks his watch or his phone or whatever, he rolls them and removes the dice with the appropriate number, and when you're out of dice, the thing happens.
yeah. I love that. That's great. Doing that at a table too, where everyone just stops. It's like, we haven't talked to you in a while, DM. Like, what are you rolling for? How many
Mm-hmm.
dice do you have? It's like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I have a sand timer I use for Shadow Dark. They have the torch timer, and I have a physical sand hourglass that I use. And I love just having any excuse to play with trinkets during a game. I will wholeheartedly use.
I'm a fidget, so having something to physically fiddle with is wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, no, it sounds like a really fun. So you said you're going to Kickstarter. You have the preview page up now. Um,
Yep.
Obviously, if you send me a link, I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you want to tell people how they can find that any better or anything else,
Beefy Shotgun Wizards. We're the only Beefy Shotgun Wizards on Kickstarter. So I'll actually send you that link right now.
okay,
Um,
you just
but yeah,
DM me or whatever.
and there is a
Uh,
link to the itch page in there as well,
okay,
where anyone who's interested, you can download for free how many pages I want to say we're up to like 30, yeah, about 32 page quick shot guide. So try it before you buy it. It is absolutely free to download, and you can find that on the Kickstarter page as well.
Okay.
I'm playing with my computer and
that's
it's
where
starting to lag, so I'm just going to stop.
That's okay. I recorded the first, I don't know, 150 or so episodes of this podcast on a 12 to 14-year-old PC, so I'm familiar with computers not playing well.
There you go. You're playing with fire on that one. Playing with fire.
Well, I could tell you a tech story that'll just make your head spin if you're a tech person at all. Oh, I love to tell tech people this, and they look at me and they go, "But no." Well, yes, but no. I understand.
Well, now I'm curious. Tell me, and
Okay.
I'll let you know if I get it.
So this old box, I had put, I think, Windows 10 on it when I had to replace the hard drive, and there is that known glitch in the audio software in Windows 10 where sometimes it just does weird stuff, right? Because the drivers decide they don't like each other that week, or I don't know, anyhow.
Yeah.
So I thought my headphones were dying. And this actually happened during recording an interview with someone. You know, like they were just cutting out, whatever. I'm like, well, I eventually figured out what it was after I got a new set of headphones, that my computer was randomly switching audio outputs. So I went and disabled all of the ones except for the one I was using for my headphones. It was still doing it. Like, what the? So just for no good reason other than I was a little bit frustrated with the feel of it, I had been using, you remember those old Microsoft wireless keyboard mouse combo units with like the hockey puck?
Yeah.
You know, the mouse and the keyboard communicated to the hockey puck, and that was plugged into the computer. Well, that's the setup I had. So I grabbed an old mouse I had laying around and a spare keyboard from somewhere, plugged it in, okay. And then I got a mechanical keyboard, and I changed keyboards and the problem went away.
That's wild.
7 to 8 months, not an instance of it whatsoever. And then it randomly started again. And to fix it that time, I had to go in and physically disconnect the wires to the auxiliary audio ports that are in parallel with the main ones from the motherboard.
You've definitely lost me on the tech side. However, as someone who stubbornly has used Microsoft Word for a long time, you are conveying to me the exact same, trying to put an image in that doesn't destroy a document, and knowing there are better solutions, but no, it's supposed to work this way. I spiritually, I am with you.
Well, gosh, this has been a fun conversation. And anything more you want to add? Do you have any socials people can follow you on or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you again for having me, Steve. This has been a blast. I'm on Instagram most actively, Dungeons and Hammers. I also paint little guys. I've started doing videos, very short videos recently. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm on camera now. So you can go check me out there. Itch.io, I don't know how people say it. Also Dungeons and Hammers. You can find Beefy Shotgun Wizards on there. I've got a couple other modules as well. A Shadow Dark one, which one day I will redo. I stand by the ideas. The formatting is terrible, and I need to cut it terribly. And there's also a fun Knave module, Tomb of the Rat King or Sewer of the Rat King and the sewer thing. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, that one's pretty fun and solid, and you can see some of my Dyson logos style. I seek to emulate maps in there, or the one map. But yeah, other than that, Kickstarter page, find me there.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I think that it's time to play Game of the Week.
I'm psyched. I'm ready. I did my homework.
Game of the Week. Game of the Week.
Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I want to see what you got. I'm curious.
All right. So this may be, I think we used the prerequisite for this once a while ago. There's a Morkborg hack out there called Pulp Inc.
I've not heard of that one.
Pulp Inc. seems like a fun, or Pulp Morkborg seems kind of fun. However, I'll drop a link for this in the Green Room channel. I stumbled across Pulp Inc. Eldritch Horror. Now, for those of you who play Call of Cthulhu, half of the fun is what ways can we horribly die? Stack that with Morkborg and mechanics. I don't think I need to say anything else.
You've got me. You've got me.
This is called Pulp Inc. Eldritch Horror. Now, this supplement, it says it does require that you buy the Pulp Inc. core rules to run it. The supplement is $8 for the PDF. The PDF for the Pulp Inc. core rules is another $8. So you're only out $16. And then technically you have two games.
That's great. Is it physical or just download?
It appears to be just in PDF. They aren't showing any print on demand options, but it says, it's 70 pages of Lovecraft investigative horror, 6 classes: academic, drifter, former cultist, lawman, private eye reporter, rules for Eldritch magic, rules for Eldritch madness and recovery, opponents, a brief overview of the Eldritch mythos, an apocalypse track like the Morkborg Doom counter. So this feels like you basically just sort of stripped down the Eldritch mythos and this is from what's his name? I saw it somewhere. I recognize the name. Where is it? David Oakham. So it's like, I don't know. It just feels appropriate, right? Like, because to me, half the fun of most of the board games is, well, if it doesn't work, at least make it spectacular.
Yeah.
Like if you die, make it memorable.
No, that's awesome. It's a good fit.
It just feels like, because the thing I love about the Borg Engine games is, okay, so you died. It takes you 6 minutes to roll up another character at best. They're wonderfully simple. Again, like your game, attitude driven, much more than actual mechanics.
Yeah.
And so that's my pick for this week is Pulp Inc.'s Eldritch Horror.
That's awesome now.
Oh, that's why you probably haven't heard of it, because it's only been out for a week.
Well, awesome. This is great. Now I have something new to check out myself.
All right.
So my game of the week is from a friend of mine, Nathaniel Klein, who is a Madison-based printer. He actually did the Risograph yearbook edition of the Beefy Shotgun Wizards quick shot for a little con I held in May. But his game, the Prismatic Oracle, I believe it is still up on Kickstarter. They might be finishing up. I hope there's an after option. But he's been passing out these like little trifold pamphlets. It's really cool. It's a junk journaling game. So as you go through it, I really want to have him run it so that I can get to experience it. But you bring sort of found objects with you that you assemble over the course of play. And I don't know exactly how it works, but by the end of the game, you should have assembled like your own little like book of artifact. And it's something I'd never really considered, but it really speaks to my love of like tactile gaming. And I've got plenty of little doodads around. So I'm just really excited to support a friend, number one, but also to play something that I'd never really considered. I find this kind of thing really inspiring. I'm sure there's people out there that have been screaming, Dread, you got the Jenga idea from Dread. Yes, that is accurate. I got the Jenga idea for Beefy Shotgun Wizards from Dread. I love interacting with novel mechanics, and I find it really inspiring. So, it is the Prismatic Oracle. Really excited to check that out.
That sounds really, really cool. Especially, like, I love the found object thing, because, like, I'm a little bit that guy in real life that just sees something and goes, hey, I could use that for... And so I have piles of stuff that I'm going to use for something someday. And, and I have a penchant for occasionally playing that character in the game, not necessarily the gadgeteer, but like the kind of weird mad science guy that...
Oh my God. Steve, you and I are the same person. I'm just thinking through my current character's inventory. I have like a scrap of sail from a Spelljammer ship and like a plate of armor I ripped off from a Titan or Titanic Warforged. And it's like, my DM's always like, sure, I guess you can take that thing if you want. It's like, good. Okay, great. Is it shield sized? It's like, sure. It's like, yeah. So we're speaking the same language.
Yeah, no, that's but see, to me, that speaks to, like, for me, if you've listened to some recent episodes, I'm sure I've said it. I like to play our tabletop RPGs because I can do the weird thing, and having the weird bit inspires me to do the weird thing.
Exactly. That's the fun of it. That's the fun. I honest to God, I feel like half the reason I made the darn game is so I could keep keep generating weird items to put on a obscenely large table.
But look, I've said many times on the show that I love those generation tables. Not that I necessarily roll on them, but I'll see that one entry and it goes, oh. And I've told this story before, but you mentioned being curious about riffs, and so I'll tell it again because this is exactly what happened. So there's a character class in riffs called a crazy, which may or may not be the most you know socially sensitive way to describe it, but they have what they call mind over matter implants, where because they think are whatever, they now have the abilities. And there's various different triggers, if you will, for them to be able to kind of access these things. And so there was a table that you roll on for that. So have a new player come in, and he's played some of this game before, but so we're making a character, and he decides, oh, I'm going to make it crazy, and so he starts doing it. And so on the table of how you associate it's power by association, which means generally it's either an object or the big table was food. That you associate having your powers with eating some food. And so he rolls on the table, and he rolls, and don't ask me how this ended up on the table, but he actually rolled asparagus dipped in vanilla yogurt. Now,
I love that.
I don't know who, whatever, and we're just kind of looking at each other like, that's just weird. I said, well, we could just give you Twinkies instead. And Twinkies is the double aught entry on this D100 table. And his eyes got big. And thus was born the Twinkie Avenger.
That's awesome.
He went completely everything with this character. He named his hovercycle FD&C Yellow number 5. he he thought he was the superhero, and it just everything was Twinkie themed, Twinkie this, and we had this other character. It was called a Cyber Knight, which is sort of the Rift's version of a Jedi, if you will, which the player, this was half in character, half out of character joke. He was forever needling the Cyber Knight, come on, faithful sidekick, which just, just kind of, it was kind of a playful irritation, but he just took that and ran with it, and so no, we didn't actually roll that on the table, but it's on the table, and it, gosh, it's been 32 years since we created that character.
Oh wow.
And I still remember it.
That's awesome.
So I mean, that to me, that's the power of tables.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Two super quick stories. One of the first games I ran, a guy named his wizard, Andy Ravage, obviously play on Randy Savage, and he rolled totally randomly a sequined vest and aviators over the course of the dungeon, and that was incredible. The other was in one of my undead themed dungeons on a D666 table, so 200 and I can't do math this late, 216 options, something in that neighborhood. They rolled undead hands in a glass jar twice, and also eyes that had special abilities. It was basically riffs on Vecna, but they found 2 of the eyes and 2 of the hands, and it was just like, what are the odds? So I just threw in a zombie wandering around that was missing its hands and eyes later. And that's, as big as they are, the number of times that just weird coincidences happen that you can really, that either fit perfectly with something someone's put together or give you that shot of inspiration to do something just that little bit extra in the game. It's so much fun, and it just lets you discover as you play. Anyway, I'm dragging this into overtime here, but
that's all good. It's all good. So yeah, anything else you want to say before we sign off and call it a conversation?
I'll say this was a blast. I didn't even get to talk. I didn't even get into the bestiary. So any listeners, download it now. There are some fun things in there, like the brain in a jar and a death machine. So if that sounds interesting to you, there's many more creatures like that. So download the game, check it out, follow the Kickstarter campaign. But yeah, Steve, thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us. And I think with that, there'll be links to all kinds of stuff in the show notes, our Discord, Patreon, blah, blah, blah. And, obviously all of Peter's, links for the Kickstarter and Itch and all the other fun things. We'll put as many of those as we can down there. And I think with that, just remind everyone to be kind to each other and get out there and play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.